Good evening and welcome to Direct Line. My name is Nicole Bennett. I'm the first vice chairman of the Maryland Republican Party. And joining me tonight, my most favorite guest, former First Lady of Maryland, Kendel Ehrlich.
Yay.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, I'm such
Hi,
a super
Latoya.
fan.
Hi.
Also joining us this evening, a very special co-host, Latoya Kongolo. Did I get it right, Latoya?
That was perfect.
I've been practicing all day, girl, practicing all day. So Latoya is actually a licensed clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, a drug counselor, a mother, a small business owner, a member of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, my personal friend, and a candidate for election. All of that wrapped up in one little tiny body. Welcome, Latoya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be among two esteemed women, and I'm just honored to be here.
You know, we have so much to talk about. But before we get started, I really just want to, Kendall's on the show quite often, and we all know that I fangirl, hard stop. Governor Bob's my favorite Republican governor in the entire nation ever, right? But I wanted to read something that I found today as a part of your bio. And when I read it, it gave me pause. I know you to be this very kind person. For our listeners and our viewers, Kendel Ehrlich is very approachable. You can ask her anything. She's ready with an answer, ready with a smile, very warm and friendly. But listen to this. Former director of the Office of Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking, and formal acting principal deputy director of the Bureau of Justice Assistance. If that doesn't say badass, I don't know what does. So I like the acronym SMART. I think that's really, really a good acronym for all of that.
It's a mouthful, but it does illustrate our federal government.
It just because, I work in healthcare, so I read Medicare, they have a special language, and I read Miss going, is this my Kendel? Oh my gosh. I'm like, even bigger fan. That is tremendous. Can you tell us about some of your days in this particular position with the SMART?
Yeah, basically those two agencies are within the Department of Justice, and they are the grant arm under the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, and they are operating there with getting basically federal money out to in the SMART office. It's federal money going out to states that comply with SORNA, which is a sex offender registry, compliance. I'll get to that in a minute. And then the Bureau of Justice Assistance gets out lots of federal money to mostly police agencies, and those affiliated with the Department of Justice. It also encompasses justice reform organizations, and depending on the administration, there's more going out to one thing than the other. But at any rate, it really is an efficient way to get out grant money. And in fact, during COVID, we were the agency, BJA, to get money out to communities in order to get their COVID funding. So it is a very efficient system, I have to say. And the people that work there are very hardworking. SMART has a deputy director that has been there for a long time, and she's fabulous. And I learned a couple of things at SMART. One is the national trend against registering sex offenders, which is very unsettling from a former prosecutor perspective. It is also, a sign of our times with sort of decriminalizing way too many laws, not following the law as some of these elected prosecutors throughout the country are doing. And so that was a little unsettling. The other thing was that Indian country really suffers from sex offenders and many, many other issues, from infrastructure to alcoholism, drug use. Latoya, as you know, drugs ravishing the country.
Yes.
We can get into that because I also served as the deputy drug czar under President Trump as well. And I ran a drug court here in Anne Arundel County for 3 years. as a
Well, we have a
prosecutor.
connection. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so I'm always in those sex, drugs, and rock and roll issues, right, Nicole?
Isn't it
Absolutely.
I'm talking about them because
It's the
one, they're
fun
so
stuff.
important, and right now, quite frankly, they're so prevalent.
They
Um,
are.
an open border to me doesn't really have to do with people. It has to do with the influence of drugs and human trafficking,
Fine. Yeah.
and those massive issues that are happening right now, increasing numbers exponentially as we speak. So it is very timely to think about these issues and to talk to our children now more than ever. You know,
Absolutely.
Latoya, you are
Mhm.
so busy as it is, being a mom, running your small business, and you got to remember to talk about all these things with your kids now too.
Oh, my kids are at every event with me, so they can
Mhm.
probably give the presentation better than I can at this point.
For sure. So Latoya, in your work as an alcohol and drug counselor, what
Mhm.
have you noticed as this trend is kind of sweeping across our nation? Do you think it has a lot to do with the open border?
Absolutely. I agree. Kendall hit the nail on the head when she talked about the open borders. And when we talk about fentanyl coming into the country, we're seeing more overdoses with teenagers who are sprinkling a little fentanyl in their marijuana. And, drug dealers are selling them fentanyl laced marijuana. There are no nutrition facts on a marijuana package.
Mhm.
They don't know what they're smoking. So now we're seeing an increase in overdoses with teenagers, but obviously, we've seen it, with the heroin epidemic as well. It is a huge problem. Kendall said it best. The open borders, they open us up to crime, whether it be gangs, whether it be human trafficking, certainly drugs.
Mhm. And illness. I can tell you that RSV, when our first healthcare interaction with RSV, people were saying, my kid is sick and I don't understand why my child can't breathe. 2 weeks ago, he was healthy. Now he's on a ventilator. What happened? Well, here in the United States, we vaccinate our children a lot. We vaccinate our children on a regular basis. And when you don't, they can't go to school. They can't participate in these activities. Other nations don't do that. And it's not a first world problem when our children get sick. When a child is sick, it's everybody's problem.
Right.
This is an international issue. And I think when we think about the United States being a sovereign nation and having our own borders, there's a lot to be said about minding who's coming over our borders. My daughter and I, when she was young, we traveled to Toronto. They have like a Disney on Ice kind of show. And at the border, the Mountie asked her to state her name and her business. And she's like 4, but he was, being a Mountie. And he says, state your business, little girl. She says, I'm here to see Mickey, and it was the cutest thing. But going from the United States to Canada, I'm stopped, right?
Right.
Coming from our southern border, what are we going to do to stop? What are we going to do to manage all of it's kind of a ripple effect. It's like a rock in the pond, and it's seeping across our country in ways that we really just can't control.
We're also a really great illustration is what's happening with Ukraine and Poland taking in all the refugees.
Yes.
A country like Poland has to really adjust its infrastructure to have enough food and housing and shelter, basic
needs.
Basic things for survival of people that literally had to put a backpack on everybody pick a backpack and walk.
Yes.
It's just something that to think that we don't have any restriction here right now, and people are coming in, they're not getting vaccinated that are coming over the border, and they're not even getting tested for COVID. So it's really it's just been a terrible policy on so many levels, and unfortunately, we're really going to feel the pinch for quite some time.
Right.
Yeah.
I really foresee
the crime pinch, and particularly with prosecutors who are basically ignoring doing their job properly.
Yeah, I foresee that it's going to be maybe even at least a decade for us to recover from this, at least. because
agree.
there's so many societal ills that are coming into our country. And I know that we talk a lot about the southern border, but I think we need to just talk about immigration in general. You know, you have people that come from other countries that come here on maybe a student visa, or they may be here on a work visa, but then that visa expires. They don't necessarily go back to their country and get back in line. You know, they tend to overstay their visas and they're here. So we have illegal immigrants from all sorts of countries here, and they're not all coming from the southern border.
Well, we need a major overhaul. And, you know,
Our
many years
immigration
ago in
policy.
Congress, Senate, I remember Senator Rubio had a bill that was very close to at least addressing many of the issues that need to be addressed and sort of revamping legal immigration as well as illegal immigration. And it was pretty comprehensive, but they just couldn't get it passed and they couldn't get it done. So that was the closest that I remember sort of in the last 10 to 15 years. Really, hopefully, again, if we can get both houses, maybe we can finally do something effective.
Yes.
Both for legal immigration and illegal immigration, because, you know, I have a couple of friends who have foreign daughters-in-law or sons-in-law, and it's been a very difficult, costly process.
It is.
In order for them to become legal. And that has to be reviewed too. We have to really do something comprehensive at this point. The can has been kicked down the road forever. And it's one of the things that people get so just exhausted with Congress about. You know, can't they get this done? Stop kicking the can down the road.
Well, I agree. And, you know, we do immigration physicals in both of my medical offices now. And when we open in Frederick, we'll do them there as well. About October, the law changed and said that people who are seeking a green card through this immigration physical have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
Yeah.
Seems reasonable, right? Seems fairly reasonable because we don't want them to have tuberculosis, syphilis, gonorrhea, you know, all of those other things that we check for. There was an outcry like nobody's business. Like nobody's business. But I will say this, American medicine stood its ground and said, if you can't come here with TB, you can't come here with COVID. Right. You can't stay in the country unless you're vaccinated. And that's not our opinion on whether or not vaccines work or any of those kind of things. But if you're looking to come to our country, we need you to be healthy. We need you to not cost us any more money. And another thing that we changed, at least in my office, we don't allow people to use their health insurance for immigration physicals. So if you're lucky enough to be here in the country, documented or not, and you're on Maryland medical assistance, you may not use Maryland's taxpayer dollars to pay for your immigration. And you would think that that would have had a stopping effect, but I've got tomorrow 172, maybe 173 people looking to sign their documents. It's actually made them come more. I mean, we just charged them a flat rate. I thought it was unconscionable for the people of Maryland to have to pay for you to become a green card holder. That's something, you know, if you overstayed your visa, you got here, God only knows. Yeah, I think, you know, a couple few $100s is not going to hurt you. You know, it's a little bit of a pinch on that. But since we're talking about immigration and migration from country to country, one of the things I really wanted to touch base on is human trafficking. So there is a bill pending in Congress. It's HR 5150. It is named after Frederick Douglass. It is the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2021.
Wow.
I call it the Freddie D bill.
I was going to say that is a
good friend.
Just melt it on down. This is the Freddie D bill. So it talks about the way that the United States of America is going to stand up for victims of human trafficking and modern day slavery.
Yay.
And, you know, LaToya, that's near and dear to our heart when we talk about, LaToya is also a member of the Frederick Douglass of Maryland, Foundation of Maryland. It's near and dear to our heart when we talk about modern day slavery, when we talk about people being held in slaves in countries around this world, that the United States is helping them because they're developing nations. So what this bill says is that we're not going to give you any more developing money until you put into place something that's going to prevent modern day slavery and human trafficking in your nation. So there's a lot of people involved, but Lynn Johnson, who's watching, is asking who's the sponsor. It's Representative Christopher H. Smith out of New Jersey. He's a Republican. And he introduced the bill in September of 2021. Again, it's HR 5150, the Frederick Douglass bill. So this is going to catch fire. There are a lot of people who are very interested in making sure that human trafficking bills get passed. We need the help.
We really need the help, and this is another issue that many people don't like to talk about because it's so uncomfortable. Because here we are, 2022, United States of America. Oh, we have trafficking of human beings. Yes, we do, for labor, for sex, all kinds of things that people just don't recognize, and they are very intricate systems. They're run through cartels, they're run through terrorist organizations, and literally MS-13. I saw recently at a conference a clip from a family that talked about their tale and a young girl who had gotten friendly on the internet. This is the other thing. The internet has allowed this area to just explode.
Absolutely.
Both on the dark web, but also on the regular internet, where people pose as boyfriends to young girls. They're very patient. They develop long-term, months and months of a relationship online. And then young people will meet them, and then that's it. And this one family talked about that their daughter, they did get her back, but the MS-13 just brutalized their family, scared them all. And literally they had to be relocated by the police in order to maintain any semblance of the life that they had had before that. So it is a terrible situation, and I commend this type of legislation because we really need to be proactive. I'll have to read it and learn a little bit more about it. Again, as my time at SMART, recognizing just how much sexual deviance is out there. Pedophilia, and my husband said this a long time ago as a legislator, both in the state legislature and in Congress. He said, oh no, there's going to be a push to normalize pedophilia. And I was like, oh, couldn't possibly be that. Nobody's ever going to do that.
And yet here we are.
Just so terrible to think about people taking advantage of children, just like we think about if people take advantage of old people. So it's a really definite problem. A lot of people, a lot of different organizations out there are working, some independently just to get people out individually. Others are doing training. Let me just mention to people to be alert. I saw on social media recently, somebody at Starbucks thought that a young girl was in trouble, wrote on the cup and said, if you need help, take the lid off to drink your drink. And they did, and they saved somebody.
Oh, that's amazing.
Airlines are a place that training is done to alert any of the assistants on the airline, or even within the airport, if they see something, how to act, what to do to try to help somebody. Truck stops, trucking companies, of course, the hospitality industry. To be in a hotel and consistently see young girls come in with much older people that look like they're frightened. So it's a kind of thing to really actually talk about, because people don't think about it. They don't want to think about it, but then at least you could save one person by just being a little bit aware of your surroundings and checking out where you are and what you're doing.
We do that in my medical office. We when people leave a urine sample, we have the cups in the restroom with all the accoutrement you need for that. And we have a red pen and a blue pen. And red pen is if you're in trouble. If you're in trouble, you write your name with the red pen.
That's a great idea.
We have changed the colors. We've changed the cups, because of, especially in Tacoma Park, it's a very high transient area. People are in and out of the country all of the time in this particular area. And we want to make sure that our patients are not only healthy, but they're safe. And that part of feeling safe in your own skin, I think, is something that as Americans we take for granted. I was recently in Cozumel, Mexico, and in Houston at the airport, Miami at the airport, you see on the back of the stall doors, if you need help, call this number or text this number, on the bathroom stalls, just in case you're stuck in a situation. And I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think we really realize that Mexico had, 30,000 murders each year. They have, I mean, the cartels literally run the place, and and corruption is everywhere. I mean, we have, our issues in this country, no doubt about it. But what I think many people don't give enough praise to, if you will, is that democracy as we know it as a republic actually does work.
Absolutely.
And freedom does ring here, much more so than almost than anywhere in the world. And we should be really proud of that. And we should recognize that in these other countries, that's what it's like, to have within every stall, do you need help? How can we help you? Are you in danger?
So how can we get ahead of this so that way, because a lot of the victims do come from America. And unfortunately, they are taken out of the country into a corrupt country where they're run, like you said, by the cartels, by corrupt politicians even. So how can we get ahead of this to protect our citizens? And I think that we need to look at the profile of the individual. And what I've seen in my experience is that these women are often coming from working families, where they have two parents, even middle class, but the parents are so busy in their careers that they're leaving their children unsupervised, which leaves those children vulnerable. Then they go online, they now connect with someone, they're disconnected from their family, but they're now connecting with someone who appears to be a teenage boy, and this boy is grooming them and spending time, giving them the love and attention and affection that they're lacking at home. And now all of a sudden, they've connected with them. And like you said, once they meet with them, then, we lose them. So I think that we need to now start looking at some preventative measures. The interventions, I think that they're great, having those signs and signals. If she's malnourished, if it looks like she's being physically abused, giving them signs to let us know you need help. I think all of that is great, but I think we need to also approach it from a prevention standpoint.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what Frederick Douglass Foundation of Maryland is doing. We are having a series called Light a Candle or Curse the Darkness, right? We heard that at a Winsome Sears talk at the Trailblazers, RNC Trailblazer Awards, and it struck us like a lightning bolt. We had this on our mind of doing something with human trafficking, with sex trafficking. We want to make sure that parents recognize the signs before it's too late, because once they have your child, getting them back and keeping them is an issue. On Maryland's own website, our state government's website about human trafficking, there's a tremendous video, and it's called What I've Been Through. It's also on YouTube, where this woman that was living at home, came from a very nice home, very good family, but she felt like, those teenage years, sometimes girls don't feel like they're good in their own skin. And she wasn't as popular as she thought she should be. And she met this guy who was also dating a lot of the other girls in school, much older. It made her one of the cool kids. He told her that he loved her. She fell in love with him. And he started to bring his friends over to sleep with her. And that's the way it started. If you love me, you'll sleep with them, Right. And it got to a point where she was so ashamed. All she would do was fight with her family when they were reaching out and saying, hey, what's going on? How can we help? This and that. Her clothing changed. The way she carried herself changed. They did all of the right things. And he trafficked her to New York City and then on to Cleveland and then back to New York City. And it took her being arrested repeatedly and people in her ear repeatedly saying, listen, your family loves you. You have somewhere to go back to. You're worth more than this, over and over and over again. And even after she got out, she went right back, because that had become her new normal. So I think you're absolutely right, Latoya, making sure that parents are actively engaged. And I know it's hard. Listen, I lost my husband and it was just me and my daughter. But I am, as my daughter would call me, the crazy mom. Out of all of her friends, she'd be in her room minding her business, and I would come home and quite literally kick the door open and go, aha. And she's like, my mom's a weirdo. Just, ignore my mom. But I went through her browsing history. I checked her text messages, not because I was super snoopy, but because understanding that what I do for a living, 14, 15-hour days, she was by herself a lot. So I needed to make sure that if I couldn't be a physical presence, I was a virtual presence. We had a standing rule that if she was out with her friends and she didn't like that environment, she didn't want to be in that, she could text any of my friends and just say, I'm getting my hair cut on Saturday. That was our cue. And they would say where, and she would just type in the address. And to anybody who found that phone, it would just look like she's talking about a hair appointment. We had so many hand signals that if she was in school and she went to a private school and they would have events, with other kids, and I would be one of the moms that was chaperoning, I'd stand in the back because she didn't want me to be crazy mom publicly, right? I'd stand in the back, but if she made certain hand gestures, I knew that she was in trouble. And people thought I was, kind of crazy for that. But I needed my daughter to make it through that awkward teenage stage to become the healthy, strong young woman that she is today. But some parents just don't have it to do. And I get that. But Frederick Douglass Foundation of Maryland is working hard to do, and these are going to be free events in the community where we're going to talk to you. We're going to bring in specialists and say, listen, this is what happened. This is what you need to do. And I know that there are other organizations, churches that are doing the same thing. This is not going to go away.
Nicole, I have a couple of comments to your point. We have to keep in mind too that when a victim is groomed and they spend time with the offender or perpetrator for a period of time, they can develop what is called Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Where you bond through your trauma, and that relationship is stronger and more important to you psychologically than the love and support that you may get from your parents. So oftentimes when people question, why are these girls not leaving? Why aren't they going home? Because they have psychologically bonded to this person that has convinced them over time that they love them despite the abuse, despite everything that they're experiencing with the person.
That's very interesting. There are snippets in the video. I think it was maybe an undercover officer or two who were watching someone who they knew that was being trafficked, and she's walking down the street with her captor. That's the way I refer to him because, I don't know what better else to call him. And it looks just like a couple walking down the street. And they get maybe 10 steps down the street and he punches her in the face and she doesn't even flinch. Like this is her daily punch in the face. And as I'm watching the video, people say, oh, you clutched the pearls. I actually winced for her because, it was so sudden and so horrific and so very violent in that moment. But for her, it was just a regular walk down the street with this person. And then she started to hold his hand as her face bled as she walked down the street. And so I think that Stockholm syndrome you're talking about is a very real thing with them. Yeah.
So Kendel, can you talk a little bit about how human sex trafficking falls under SMART, and what are some of the approaches, the programs that are being implemented? Because I would like to know how we can best support the community and what resources are available to our citizens.
Yeah, I think, and one of our listeners has a question about, we have so many missing children in the country. How do we get ahead of this? And there's a couple of things that unfortunately aren't going on right now, and that is more law enforcement. We need also more experts in cybersecurity regarding the ability to track some of these people and to warn people or to recognize and to help people do that. The other thing is schools need to be a little bit more involved, and I think it can be done through education-based. There are trainings out there that can be done in the school. Sometimes school systems just don't like to talk things like addiction or, they shy away because they don't want you to think that their school has a drug problem. Really all communities have a drug problem, and all communities now have sort of these sexual deviant problems, if you will, from pedophilia to, the fact that we're not registering enough of our sex offenders.
Mhm.
People think that it's a scarlet letter now to do that, but yet, you want to be able to know if somebody is lurking near the schoolyard. And so the communities, have to find that right balance
Mhm.
in finding that type of justice. But I
Mhm.
think that the part of the problem is we don't have enough police, and we don't have enough
Agreed.
Sure.
and we
Yep.
don't have enough. We want to have a policeman within the schools. The
Absolutely.
schools in Anne Arundel County that have the officers in there, the kids
Mhm.
actually like
Yeah.
knowing that there's an officer
Mhm.
there in case something were to happen to them. They
Mhm.
feel a security about it. And the trend to not have that, again, is a very dangerous thing.
Mhm.
So we're in our country right now, we're really faced with sort of this leniency on crime all across the board.
Mhm.
And I think that this next election is going to show that we really don't want that. That the one thing we want government to do is to make us feel safe. And
Absolutely.
we're really not doing
Right.
that at the
Right.
most basic level, whether that's within the community, within the school building.
Mhm.
With school shootings, we did, ramp things up appropriately.
Mhm.
But now they're pulling back from that. And the problem is that we have a lot of this cyberbullying or, areas that for sex trafficking, where they're just beginning the process
Mhm.
of building this faith with someone and then hoping that they'll meet them and be able to, have them become Stockholm syndrome and become
Mhm.
part of their world.
Mhm.
So I think that it is really for governments, it is really beefing up the training, both for officers. It is the workforce. We need more officers. We probably need a little better pay. And we need
Mhm.
we really need that to occur so that people can feel safe. And the other thing is for schools to talk about it within the curriculum. I
Mhm.
think it's really important. I'm a big advocate that curriculum really should be updated all across the board. Kids
Mhm.
graduating need to know about how to take care of their finances,
Mhm.
about how to do certain things online by
My
themselves.
goodness.
I mean,
Mhm.
I always am amused because I know I'm not so technically advanced, but sometimes you find kids that aren't very technically
That's
advanced. We
true.
all have to do this everything
Mhm.
online now. So I think that some of the curriculum needs to be changed so that we can incorporate making people aware that they have to be aware of their surroundings all the
Yes.
time,
Mhm.
as young adults, as parents, all of it.
Mhm.
So I think that helps. And then you mentioned, and within your psychotherapist role and your counseling role, I'm sure that you see it. Amen to what you said, that parents really need to be parents.
That's
I've been
right.
Yes.
very fortunate that I haven't been in a position, most of my working career has been a choice. I don't have to be in the workforce, but I've been very lucky to go in and out of the workforce depending on what was happening with my family at the time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yep.
so I think that I have this saying, and Bob thinks it's true. Women can have it all, but not all at the same time. And
That's very true.
I
that,
can,
Mhm.
yes.
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we're actually great at adjusting. We're
Mhm.
much better at adjusting than they
Mhm.
are. And
Without question. We
I
adapt well.
sort of revel in that. I
Mhm.
think it's a great thing.
I think
Mhm.
resiliency is built
Adjusting,
into our DNA anyway as women.
yeah, adjusting
Just
for
saying.
your family is really key.
Mhm.
Um, and so, uh, anyway, so I think you need to really pay attention and always talk about it.
Mhm.
I, like you, Nicole, my boys, are always embarrassed by me. I talk
Mhm.
too loud. I ask too many
Mhm.
questions. I repeat myself about safety issues all the time.
Mhm.
And it's because they're boys. They barely hear anything. They have no idea. They think they're invincible. And the
Mhm.
list goes on and on. So part of
Mhm.
my job is to be a broken record. And I
Yeah.
admit that. They think I'm going senile, but I think I'm just great.
Now,
I just love repeating myself to them. So at any rate, it's takes vigilance by everybody.
mhm.
And in this case, it does take a village. It takes
Yes.
everybody working together and really recognizing it's a serious issue.
That's
And we
right.
do not want our children taken from our communities
Mm-hmm.
and put into this type of bondage
Mm-hmm.
and exploited to such trauma. And as
Yes.
a psychotherapist, I think you recognize that there are many people now with trauma. Our society has a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Many families, including my own. I have a nephew that passed from an overdose.
Oh,
Trauma of young people dying,
Yep.
unnecessarily and accidentally
Mm-hmm.
with all of this fentanyl and most families are touched by addiction and
mhm.
cancer. And
Absolutely.
both provide the type of trauma that people need help.
That's
Mhm.
right.
And I'm hoping that a lot of the barriers against receiving help are coming down,
Mm-hmm.
and that people are recognizing that it's good to talk about things. It's good
Mm-hmm.
to get help from others to get through what life brings us, especially at the speed that it does in today's society.
It's very much more difficult to be a teenager today, or an adult even today, than it was 20 years ago. There was a hockey goalie. I'm a big hockey fan, and he's a professional athlete. He's a very good hockey goalie, but he started having behavioral health problems and mental problems, and so his teammates said, "Take some time off." Quite literally, we're in the hunt for the Stanley Cup, but take some time off because we need you to be whole as an individual. Of course, the owners had a hissy fit. That's what owners do.
Mm-hmm.
But he still plays in the NHL. And he took the time that he needed to make himself whole, to take care of his
Mm-hmm.
family, to make sure that they were all good. I think as we move into this different type of America, one of the things that I think I like about the new America, is that you can say, I need help, and
Right.
call someone like Latoya and say, Latoya, life is coming at me too
Mm-hmm.
fast. Can you give me some skills, some tools to help me? And I
Right.
think that has become a new normal that I can appreciate. Absolutely
Yeah.
appreciate.
And we have to normalize mental health. I mean, the truth is that in my world, I feel like we need 3 people on speed dial: our primary care doctor, our dentist, and a therapist. I mean, this is part of
Mhm,
your health and your
mhm,
wellness. Your head is connected to your body. Your head gets sick just like your body gets sick. And we
mhm.
need to normalize that it happens to all of us. And for us in the mental health world, we look at depression and anxiety as the cough and cold of mental health. We
Sure.
Mhm.
all get depressed.
Mhm,
We all get anxious. It happens. We have dopamine, we have GABA, we have certain neurotransmitters in our brain. And when they take a dip, it's almost like your immune system takes a dip and you get a cough
mhm,
or cold. You're going to get depressed and anxious, but it should not be where a child feels like, because I'm depressed, something's so wrong with me. Now I'm considering suicide. I'm having thoughts of
Right.
suicide. I'm self-mutilating. They
mhm,
look at it and they make it such a crisis because they're not really talking to people about it and recognizing that there are coping strategies to deal when our brain takes a dip. And
mhm,
we need to just kind of, get that re-up in our neurotransmitters. And there are natural ways to do it. There's, I mean, gosh, even if you just do 15 minutes of sunlight a day, it'll
mhm.
help decrease the depression. I mean, those are little things we can do. If you sweat, if you laugh, I mean, those are just natural remedies that help boost our brain to fight off the depression and anxiety. But if someone has it when it's clinical depression or anxiety, then obviously, then you
You
want to
need
look at
pharmacology.
medications, you want to look
Mhm,
at, intensive outpatient therapy. But yeah, I mean, mental health and addictions are the number one family diseases. Obviously, Kendall mentioned cancer, but
mhm.
I can't think of one family who has not been touched by mental health and addictions. And if we don't get ahead of it, then this crisis is just going to continue to persist. And we can't afford to lose a generation to these disorders that are, a part of our families, our communities.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, I'm a staunch advocate for anything mental health and addictions
So
because
we agree with you at our medical practice. We absolutely talk about when people come for their annual physical. Have you ever seen a psychotherapist? And they're like, oh, I'm not crazy. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be crazy. You just have to be human. Do you have a brain? I'm going to send you to this brain specialist, right? This is what this is.
Right.
Someone to help you sort your thoughts in your ideas. And it's helped a lot with women who find themselves in financial trouble, in relationship troubles, that kind of thing. And they go begrudgingly. I mean, they go angry, but they go and they come back and they say, you know, it really helped. So now they're sleeping, they're eating right. The therapists are encouraging them to get outside and walk and get some exercise. It was very much a big help coming out of the pandemic, where people just, for whatever reason, could not find the reset button. You know, when people tell you to put the brakes on your life, it's hard to get the machine rolling again. So we had a lot of people that we sent to, as we say, behavioral health. Your behavioral health specialist is, and a lot of people said, well, you shouldn't do that. You're kind of pigeonholing people and there's a stigma. And we said, not here. There's no stigma. There's absolutely no stigma. If I could have LaToya come in and just work with the staff, right? Just resolve, because somebody drank the last water and didn't put another one in the fridge, and I lost it. And they were like, "You need a therapist." Like,
Nicole, guess what? We all need a checkup from the neck up.
Yes,
we all do.
Absolutely.
That's the reality. And for me, in my opinion, if you've never seen a therapist, then you're most likely crazy.
Yeah.
If you've never had a checkup from the neck up, you are most likely crazy, because it's real. I mean, this is a part of this is our reality, and we need to talk about it. We're all affected by it. It just needs to be a part of our overall health and wellness.
Yeah, I thought what was good with the hockey player is that one of the announcers for another team said, you know, back in my day when we played, a man was a man, a hockey player was a hockey player. And his co-host said, he is still a man and he is still a tremendous hockey player. In fact, he plays hockey at a speed that you can't even fathom when you played. Because he has an illness in his brain does not change who he is. Would we be having this conversation if he had COVID?
Right.
Yeah. And at that point, you know, they're not on my team, but I was cheering for them that particular night for some playoff implications. But I felt really good about the sport in that moment. It wasn't.
The judge in my drug court used to say, when people were hesitant about taking medically assisted treatment for opioids in particular, it used to say, well, you know, if you had cancer and the doctor said you're going to have, you know, this is your treatment plan, X, Y, and Z, you go along with it without asking any questions. And this is the same thing. You have a disease. We have some medication that can help you. And this is what, you know, this is the plan for you to be successful within this program. And, you know, then you'd see kind of the light bulb go off and, you know, and then, you know, of course, many people do well. Sometimes they don't, but, you know, they go on and they take their treatment and they need it. So it's good. I've been just recently, I've seen two of my huge success stories from many years ago. They're both clean for a long time now. Came up, give me big hugs. I'm sure you get this, LaToya, in your practice.
Gratifying.
And, you know, it just makes you feel good that just because you reach out, you're a little human, you're patient, respectful, which seems to be a trait that's waning away slowly but surely. And just treat them with respect. And it's amazing how everyone can get along really well under all those types of circumstances and treatment.
I just want to give kudos to Salika Bazemore. I see that she's on. She talked about her experience with her son and getting an EP, getting him into treatment, and he's at Hopkins, and you know, where he's going to be stabilized. I just want to say, great job, Mom, because it takes a lot of courage and strength for families to say, you know what, you know, you need someone to step in. Maybe that person is not mentally in a good mental state to make that decision on their own. So I just want to thank the families who step up to get their loved ones the help that they need. But I will say this, I believe that our system and our policies can do a better job with protecting families and helping families. I mean, too many families, and I'm just going to say it, where they're living like prisoners in their own homes, where because their loved one is an adult, they really don't have a lot of say or, you know, in that person getting treatment. And you know, it's just not fair to the individual, and it's not fair to family members. And I think that we need to really revisit policies and how we can best support families who are going through what we know are the #1 family diseases.
You know? Do you mean that I used to see this in court when I was a prosecutor in juvenile court up in Harford County? Do you mean that sometimes rectifying thing is not putting people back within the family structure because that's where the cause is? Is that what
Well,
you're
I'll
talking about?
say, okay, well that's another issue, but I get where you're
Okay.
going with that.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, I used to
the
always argue, why are we doing that?
Mhm.
yeah,
I don't understand. The
okay,
root is coming from
that is
there.
a point.
Isn't
I'll
there a nice aunt or uncle or somebody else that could get involved?
or a transitional home or a recovery program. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
Mhm.
so many options, and I always give family members those options because you're right. Sometimes family members they need recovery themselves. Okay, it's not just
Mhm.
their loved one. Families need to recover too, and they may not be in an emotional state to be able to best support their loved one coming back into the home. But that's on the back end. I'm talking more like the front end. Like this family is living with this adult child who's in their basement. They may be doing drugs. They may be
Oh.
psychiatrically unstable.
Mhm.
They feel like their hands are tied. I don't know what to do. I don't know what sort of what leverage a family has in order to get their loved ones into treatment. Zalika had a great success story, where she was
Mhm.
able to get the EP and granted and get her loved one into treatment. But a lot of times, family members, they will actually do the EP. Their loved one goes to the hospital, they're screened, and then they're released within a matter of hours
Mhm.
with no interventions, with no medications, no sort of aftercare support. And it's a problem. It really is a problem.
I think there also needs to be somewhat of a better setup of resources,
Mhm.
affordable resources
Mhm.
that can be done. We had a fabulous program in Anne Arundel County where those that were addicted could walk into the firehouses and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I need help." And the
Mhm.
crisis team, I don't know if you're familiar with that group, but
I actually
the
helped plan
crisis,
that and put that together in the
You
county.
did.
yeah, well, then you did a
Yeah.
fabulous job because Barb, who was,
Mhm.
Barb, who
Yes, of
headed
course. She's
that
retired. She
group.
retired a long time ago, but I worked with Barb.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she just, it was just a really, really great program to get
Mhm.
people immediate resources
Right.
and to get them immediate help. And I think it should be a national type of program.
Yeah, well, it is actually an award-winning program now, and other states have adopted it, and across Maryland, I think we were the trailblazers for it. But today
Mhm.
is actually the 5-year anniversary of the program, the Safe Stations program.
Oh, is
Oh,
that right?
wow. That's
It is.
wonderful.
Today is actually the 5-year anniversary, and we have saved thousands of lives, and a lot of people have come through. Most people go through the fire stations. They don't necessarily like to go to the police stations,
Right.
but we try to assure
Mhm.
them that they're going to get the help, and there are no repercussions. But
Well,
um,
if they had warrants and that kind of thing, they would call my program in particular because
yeah,
the drug program could be part of their
hmm
treatment
yes,
suggestions. So at any
Mhm.
rate, yeah, it's just a really fabulous program. So if
Yeah.
I, you're an amazing woman already, but now even more
Absolutely.
so
It,
in
it
my
was a
eyes. Thank you
collective
very
effort.
much.
I certainly cannot take full credit for it, but I'll say that a lot of the programs that we established here in Anne Arundel County, a lot of other counties have adopted those programs,
Mhm.
and I'm very proud of the work that I've been able to do as part of this team. But there's still so much more to work, so much more work to do.
Well, you ought
That
to mention that out there on the trail.
that's what I was going to say. And on that note, we're going to talk about very briefly how important it is to elect the proper officials, people
Mm.
who have a heart for the community. We talked
Mhm.
about Zulika Bazemore. She's running for delegate in Baltimore City. She is a tremendous asset to her community. She
Absolutely.
actually goes into the tent encampments, and she doesn't go to highlight the homeless problem. She goes with resources to help.
Mhm.
This
Uh-huh.
is what she does, and she's done it for years. It's a part of her
Mhm.
personal mission, of where she is with her walk with Christ. And when I tell you, she just blows me away. She absolutely blows me away with everything she does, from money management down
Mhm.
to knocking on tent doors, talking about what do you need. And it is
Mhm.
just a wonderful
Yeah.
walk in life where you get to meet such very successful women who are out in the community doing
Mhm.
everything it takes to make us better. I think it's a
Mhm.
tremendous, tremendous blessing. Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
it's important for people who are running to have heart, but it's also really important that they are effective in making some changes and recognizing where those changes need to be, and not just doing vigils or, lowering flags, but, as the city has person after person dying and shootings and this and that, there has to be a real live policy that comes and is implemented with people that care about that and recognize that many, the police department, the state's attorney's office, the mayor's office, they all have to come together in order to do that. And it just has to be recognized throughout the country that you need to have the policies as well. And if you're young and you don't know as much, then you need to reach out to those people that can help and make it more effective. It just kills me when I hear report after report of people dying in Baltimore City. It really hurts, and people are leaving as a result of it, leaving the city and leaving the state.
Yeah. Oh, I lived in Baltimore City, so I'm one of those people. And I came to Anne Arundel County because I said I want the safest community for my kids as possible. But I shouldn't have had to leave because I couldn't sleep because I was so my anxiety. I felt like I had PTSD when I came here to Severna Park and I heard sirens and alarms for the first time. I freaked out and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I ran outside and it's Santa Claus on the fire truck.
That's the Santa run. It's the Santa run.
Is this a thing? I had never seen on a fire truck.
We love the Santa run.
Right. So, I mean, but that was me coming out of Baltimore City and, hearing sirens for all the wrong reasons. But
So listen, ladies, we have gone long, and Dwight, who's usually our producer, and as I call him, the voice of God that whispers in my ear, you're going too long. Jeff is producing for us tonight. Jeff Thornton, who's running for Howard County Central Committee. So people in Howard County, Jeff Thornton for Central Committee. Latoya, give us your final word. First, thank you, Kendel. As always, absolutely.
Ladies, I'm honored to have been with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Latoya. Absolutely my honor. And I'll say this, I'm really excited about this election year. I think we have a lot of great, competent, effective, proven to be effective leaders and public servants who are running for office. And I'm so excited. I hope to be serving with a lot of the folks who are running. And I'll say I'm calling out Zalika because I see that she's here and she's making a lot of comments. But I think that Zalika can probably relate to what I was told when I was outdoor knocking recently. I had someone say, Latoya, I'm very familiar with your work. And the best way to describe you is that you are a bridge builder and a gap filler. We need people in office who are solution focused and who are proactive. We don't need any more Band-Aids put on problems, on gaping wounds. We need to now get ahead of the problems and be proactive and give our communities the best chance at being safe, for our children, the next generation. We have so much work to do, and we got a lot of people running who are willing to do it. And I'm one of those people. But if people want to reach out to me, they can go to my website. It's www.latoya4maryland.com. So thank you for having me. I'm so honored. Kendel,
good luck to you.
I'm so excited to even be on this call with you.
Do you want to join the Kendel fan club? I'll send you an application over.
How do I do that?
I'm your fan club.
It's like the white goes, Kendall's on. I'm like, I'm on my way. I'm driving around the beltway like a lunatic. But thank you, ladies. This has been amazing. And thank you, Zulika and Lynn and everybody that commented in the chat box. This has been a wonderful evening. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll try to get to it next week on the next show. Thank you again. This has been Direct Line Live with Kendel Ehrlich and Latoya Concolo. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.